Cuba, the land of the world famous cigars, the salsa, beautiful countryside, stunning sunsets, and of course, communism. For 3 weeks, I embarked on a journey through this fascinating Caribbean nation. Join me as I share my insights on Cuban food, best tours and experiences, and the legacy of Cuban Revolution, along with some key traveler tips. Welcome to Cuba. Indians have visa on arrival in Cuba. If you are living in US or Canada, as I was, then you are allowed to enter with no hassle. If you are an Indian resident, you can just buy a Cuba tourist card from the embassy or the airline for a nominal fee, which will then act as your visa. My journey in Cuba was as below. Varadero is where all the cruise ships end up since it has so many all-inclusive resorts. It has a decent beach, but I don't recommend spending more than a day here. Havana is amazing and a must visit for your trip to Cuba. I spent over 2 weeks here in total and enjoyed it immensely. Las Terrazas is a UN Heritage Eco Village. It's beautiful but crowded with tourists. Viñales is a delightful rustic village that has loads of activities to do, like learning how to roll a Cuban cigar, rock climbing, and horseback riding. I strongly suggest skipping Cienfuegos entirely unless you are passionate about architecture. Trinidad is a colonial UN heritage town, a great place to spend a few days with some pristine beaches nearby. If you are a non-vegetarian, except for the seafood, it's bad. If you are a vegetarian, it's plain awful. Pack a lot of dry fruits and protein bars as I did. You will be limited to rice and beans and get fried plantains if you are lucky. Although good desserts are not hard to find. Local fruits are decent, but because of US sanctions, fertilizers and pesticides are not easily available, making the fruits less appetizing. Although the coconut with honey is a nice touch. There are of course some vegan cafes, but they are pretty pricey. When I was visiting, and for decades before, Cuba had a dual currency system. Cuban peso for locals and convertible peso pegged to the US dollar for the tourists. This system has now been closed during the pandemic. I doubt this change has improved things for the locals. Cuba still faces strict US sanctions, and in spite of recent reforms, it is still a communist country. If you want to help out the locals, bring medications, hygiene products, and other essentials that make life more tolerable. For obvious reasons, Cubans don't like to talk about politics. You really need to get to know them well for them to open up. I got two polar opposite perspectives from my guides about the revolution. One said that the revolution was needed, as things were really bad before it happened. But because the Cuban government keeps emphasizing America is imperialist, it doesn't have an impact on Cubans. In reality though, it is true. America is an imperialist nation with interventions all over the world. The counter to this view came from my other guide, who is a doctor but is working as a guide because he earns more. His grandfather is a hero in the country for fighting with Fidel Castro during Bay of Pigs invasion. In spite of this, he hates the revolution. He explained how the government wants him to come back to work as a doctor, and because he refused, they increased his tax from 55 to 70%. He said that things do not look like improving at all. and that nearly every single one of the inhabitants would immigrate if given a chance. Following are the top 3 tours from my trip. First is a night enjoying the Buena Vista Social Club, a Grammy-winning musical collective that has pretty much the best musical talent from Cuba. If in Havana, you have to check them out. The second is a bar hop in Trinidad. Trinidad has limited options compared to Havana, but what it has are amazing. This bar hop will take you to the best spots. We start at La Canchanchara. It is famous for inventing the cocktail Canchanchara made from sugarcane rum. Next, we head to Cafe El Mago. This is the host Carlos's bar. It is designed more like a German pub, a completely different vibe to everything else in town. And we finish with the best of the lot at La Cueva. It's a club inside a natural cave, and it's definitely an experience. Last on the list is just a simple hike to a waterfall. But what makes it special is the host Dennis, who is highly entertaining. He is flamboyantly gay and full of stories. This is also where I did a cliff jump from 50 feet. Go to Cafe Bohemia in Plaza Vieja, Havana. Have a drink, relax, and watch the plaza in action with some live music. Watch the sunset at Fort Castillo del Morro near Havana City. Try out some alternate transport options, be it riding around Havana in a vintage car or a buffalo cart with no wheels. Smoke a Cuban cigar sitting in a rocking chair on the porch while watching the sunset. I booked pretty much all my stays and tours through Airbnb. The app works perfectly fine in Cuba. The prices for Casa Particular are ridiculously cheap and the tours are great value. Maps.me is the only offline map. It's accurate, but its route guidance is shit. You will reach the destination, but it won't be the most efficient route. Accessing internet is a hassle involving government offices, long queues, scratch cards, and public parks. To keep your frustration to a minimum, be sure to book a casa with a Wi-Fi connection. For intercity transport, Via Azul is very popular among tourists and will be full. Your alternate is these buses which run from and to major hotels in the city. To book one, just go to a hotel and talk to the reception. Journey through Cuba left me with conflicting emotions. As a traveler, I found myself immersed in a living time capsule, experiencing the charm of a simpler era before the digital age. However, beneath its enchanting facade, I couldn't ignore the palpable longing for change among the locals. For those considering a trip to Cuba, seize the opportunity soon. As the country gradually modernizes, it risks losing some of its authentic old world charm.